Ooh, here we go. Welcome back. It's Chaos Theory, and I'm Aurian Archive. Okay, couple of topics to go over while I'm out hunting badges in City of Heroes. The first topic on my mind is Twitter and Elon Musk. So, what is going on? Well, I've already been over this in previous streams, or I've talked about the Twitterozzi, the Twitter employees were not able to put two and two together. They did not realize that the substantial brain drain by Elon Musk owned companies SpaceX, Tesla, or Telsa, the Tesla, oof, give me a second, and Starlink meant that a significant amount of programmers, developers, architects, code level developers from Twitter were now working for Elon Musk. We're encountering Elon Musk on a regular basis, and everyone really saw Elon Musk as a normal guy. This guy, he'd be there hanging out, talking directly to the employees, and be the guy who would stay overnight if a problem wasn't fixed. He'd be sticking his nose in everything. He'd be the guy at the bar. He'd be the guy at the party. He'd be the guy who even, if you were very valuable and, you got stranded by the side of the road because you had a flat tire, Elon Musk would probably be the kind of guy who'd go and get you while you wait for a tow truck to get there so you can get back to work to do something really cool and awesome. So it's kind of keeping in mind that Elon Musk was talking with a number of employees headhunted from various tech organizations to work on admittedly very complex problems. And again, it's Elon Musk. You can debate how smart he is or is not on any given specific subject, but Elon Musk does know how to hire people who are very good at one task or another. Elon Musk doesn't personally have to be a rocket genius. Elon Musk just has to hire somebody who is a rocket genius. Once you understand that distinction, and once you understand it, these are now people who are talking casually. You can begin to understand when or where things might slip, and somebody might say something that maybe shouldn't have been said in the interest of one party or another. This is why I can state with great confidence that before Elon Musk even started looking at Twitter for a purchase opportunity, before the first offer was even made, Elon Musk already knew that a vast amount of Twitter traffic was controlled by scripts running artificial accounts, aka bots. Elon Musk already knew that at the press of a few buttons, a few select individuals could shape the traffic to promote or deboost any single account, any single post, any group of accounts, any group of posts. Okay? So Elon Musk already knew that before he even approached Twitter to make a purchase. More importantly, Elon Musk also probably very likely knew who was paying for this boosting and deboosting. And this is kind of my whole point. The one line I shout over and over: who paid for this? Who set the money out? Who paid somebody's rent? Who paid somebody's mortgage? Who paid for somebody's car to do this task? Who paid? Because this kind of work, it's not done for free. Yes, you do have ideologues who probably will work for free without a paycheck, but for the most part, you're not going to have somebody willingly censor other people unless they're getting paid to do it. Being caught and sent to jail is generally not something that people want to do a job for free on. All right, so once we understand that Elon Musk went into the Twitter purchase fully cognizant and is fully aware that the company was overvalued, that The vast amount of traffic was artificially generated, that the profile of Twitter was artificially boosted, and that the source of Twitter's overboosting and financial income was not derived from advertisers, but from either nation states or political activists paying for political censorship. That is to say, Elon Musk knew for certain before ever approaching Twitter for a purchase that Twitter was a company whose finances were predicated on the selling of censorship to nationalized interests. And do you think I'm being over dramatic on that? No, I'm not. Anyways, so what happened? Well, when Elon Musk confronted Twitter about the artificial inflation, and I should note here, Elon Musk didn't approach Twitter about the financing first. Elon Musk, as far as I can tell, did not open up questions on who paid for this. Rather, Elon Musk opened up on, I need a real handle on the amount of artificial traffic that can be generated. Now, again, Elon Musk already knew ahead of time from former engineers who implemented those systems exactly how much traffic Twitter could generate for any specific paid for package deal. Wasn't a question, it's a flat statement. Elon Musk already had that information. All right, so we can take that and then look at how Twitter responded. The Twitter board, the shareholders, those who would stand to financially gain from the package that Elon Musk offered, the buyout package, were not aware of the technical details of the censorship finances. As far as the shareholders and investors knew, Twitter was just a really good advertising platform. Although there were already rumblings long beforehand that something was wrong. Businesses that were investing heavily in Twitter or heavily on Twitter to targeted demographics simply were not getting the return on investment for their advertising dollars. And we're talking about massive companies like soda products, energy drinks, uh, racing cars, off road vehicles, ATVs, and other kinds of sportscraft, as in entire industries that sunk significant amounts of money into Twitter on an advertising campaign and, relatively speaking, got absolutely nothing in return, despite theoretically their advertisement being targeted at Twitter users who were talking about subjects that were relevant to that advertiser. If you are, we'll pick on Mischief Maker here for a second. If you are Holly and you do a lot of off-roading adventures and you go out and you take people on trails and everyone who follows you on Twitter is talking about off-road Jeeps, then it would be fairly a safe assumption that if Jeep or Dynaxles or uh, Goodrich tires, if they were to take out a significant amount of advertising for their products and requested it be placed on Mischief Maker's feed, and then they get zero return from people who are following Mischief Maker, then the advertisers know advertisements are being seen or are supposedly being seen, but they're not actually getting a return on it. There's no correlation of products being bought in exchange for the exposure of this product on this platform. Well, that now raises kinds of interesting questions. Is why are you spending this money on this particular outlet if you're not actually getting a return? And this has been a trend for almost every single major advertiser that has sold a massive or attempted to advertise a massive product on Twitter. The advertising return on investment has simply never been there. Now, why the advertising return on investment isn't there can be chalked up to any number of different factors. First of all, you have ad blockers. A lot of people who use Twitter do so on a device or on a platform where they can block the ads. They never saw the ads to begin with. So, if advertising is your thing and your target audience isn't even seeing the advertisements, well, and then there's the other aspect. What if these advertisements are actually reaching a smaller market, a smaller legitimate market than the investors were led to believe on? Now, if you're thinking, hang on, isn't that fraud? Yes, it is. It would be criminal fraud if you're a business to sell a product or a service by using falsified data. And it can result in jail time if you falsify data to gain money from an unsuspecting. If you lie to an unsuspecting client, or even to a suspecting client, if you lie and you use that lie to make a product or make a profit, that is technically a crime. Now, whether or not it can be proven that it was a crime at the time that the claims were made is an open question. And there is a world of difference between overeager market promotion, and I'll pick on Musk here for a second. I find it reprehensible that Elon Musk sold people on the full self-driving Teslas that are never going to be capable of full self-driving without a literal quantum leap in computational power, a literal quantum leap in battery capacity, and a literal quantum leap in image processing. You can get close, but there's a reason why uh, it's now being a big deal in the fabrication circles on why one company may land the orders to make full self-driving processors for Teslas, and another fabrication company will not get that opportunity because it does require some extensive, extensively custom, extensively or hideous. I would rather maybe I should go hideously expensive and highly technical components to make the system work as described. But Elon Musk still sold a number of Teslas on the promise that yes, these have full self-driving. No, they don't, and they never will. Now I find that reprehensible. But if you're going to take that kind of claim to court, well, good luck proving that it was a criminal action made with intent to defraud. Yeah, it's because technically you can get to a point where it is possible. There is wiggle room for here. Uh, the whole, the whole point of the CEO is to talk the product up and to make it sound as good as possible. That's just marketing, and well, one of the reasons marketing is legal is most of the time it doesn't actually work. Which circles back around to if your business model is based on advertising, but the only reason marketing and advertising is legal is because it doesn't actually work, where is your income stream coming from? What are the people paying the bills actually paying for it? And this is when we circle right back around to Twitter wasn't selling advertisement services. Twitter was selling content control services and burying the content control packages under advertising packages. It's one thing for a politically invested individual to outright pay for a censorship package, shut this hashtag down, shut this person down. It's a completely different thing for a company to say, here's a few $100 million. We'd like to promote this product even though we're not going to get any return on it. Oh, and if you could also, just do something about this list of people that our CEO really doesn't like, that'd be great. Yeah. So now we have we should by now have a scope. We should have a framework for understanding what Elon Musk was buying or what he was looking to buy when he was looking at Twitter. He was looking to drop a hint. And again, we have to go back to the guy's history. And when someone else was asking me about this, I said, my quick comeback was, "You're asking me to psychoanalyze Elon Musk. I'm not sure I can do that. We're talking about a guy who came out of apartheid Africa, an actual African American." Yeah, keep that in mind. He's actually an African American. Yeah, that blows a few holes right there, doesn't it? Anyways, so Elon Musk came out of a very strict apartheid country that he fled. We're talking about somebody who is anti racist, anti bigotry, anti socialism on a level that a large portion of the tech oriented world probably will never understand in a face-to-face confrontation. I don't want to say first world countries, because this some what we would have described as third world countries or second world countries may not have faced the the damage that socialism can inflict as much as those who have suffered under an apartheid system. So, keeping that in mind, where Elon Musk came from and what his ideology can be demonstrated to be. Again, I'm not qualified to psychoanalyze the guy. I'm not qualified to tell what he's thinking or calculate what move he's going to make next. But I can extrapolate that what what probably broke Elon Musk back in this case was the overt censorship, the repetition of events that occurred in Africa. And those are important considerations to keep in mind when looking forward. And so we find ourselves circling back around to the Twitter numbers, the finances. Always been a little sus. And then Jack goes off and starts the whole Square app financial services. Well, now we have the uh, previous owner of Twitter, previous director of Twitter, who's no longer really invested in the company, is working on a financial services platform, and then we start having questions of money laundering. And that was Jack using Square to launder the money that was being paid to censor content on Twitter. Now, there is strong evidence to suggest that yes, that's exactly what was happening, that Jack was indeed accepting payments for Square or payments through Square or fees to use the Square application, and turning that around, and somebody was purchasing a service on Square to gain access to censorship on Twitter. Again, there's evidence to suggest that's exactly what happened. Whether or not that evidence has been presented to a district attorney at a state or federal level, I am unsure of. I believe it has, but I have not seen any particular action taken on it if that evidence were to have been handed over. And yes, there's an easy pot shot here that the current Biden administration is in no way interested in actually enforcing laws or going after payment for censorship, because that's kind of what the Democrat Party is doing, and that the clientele list of those who paid for censorship kind of matches 1-to-1 with the DNC's top tier donor list. But that's going to be a question to be picked up with a change of administration and a change in state level investigatory agencies. Anyway, so going back and trying to keep on the topic of Twitter and Elon Musk. So what we really have happen is the board of directors of Twitter, the shareholders, they were not I'm going to use the phrase here, read in. They were not read in. What's over here? They were not read in on exactly how Twitter was making its money. They were not read in on what was being done with the company finances. They weren't being read in on what services were being bought or sold for other services. So when Elon Musk shows up and makes an offer for the company that is significantly overvalues the state of the company as is, and then Elon Musk immediately follows this over offer with specific questions about a topic that the board of directors and shareholders legitimately have no idea on. That is the use of artificial accounts to boost or deboost specific types of content or to shutter specific people from being able to share their content. And now you have a conflict of interest. The programmers know, the Twitter employees, they know they've been called out. They know that Elon Musk is asking questions that they have the answers to. The board of directors and shareholders don't know that Elon Musk already has those answers. And even if they did suspect that Elon Musk already had those answers, they have no good way to prove that Elon Musk already had those answers. So now we have circle around where the board of directors, the shareholders, those who would benefit from a buyout are trying to, they're now looking at the employees and going, how bad is this? And the employees going, oh, hey, no problem. dash RM dash RF. Hey, nothing here. Give me that hammer. Oh, yeah, there's absolutely nothing wrong. Melt it, melt it, melt it down. The whole, a destruction of evidence party that made Hillary Clinton's cell phone smashing look like small time. So now, the Twitter employees have effectively destroyed the evidence and utilities and tools that they were using to overtly censor and control the flow of traffic on the Twitter network. But as I said in previous streams, the damage was already done. Everyone outside of Twitter, all of the legitimate business interests who had purchased advertising on Twitter, are now looking at Elon Musk and going, wait, what? How much is actually bot traffic? And from their own return on investment predictions, how much they were told to expect, informed based on traffic patterns and how much they actually got in return on investment. The numbers that Elon Musk gave for how large the artificially directed traffic could be lined up with the return on investments from advertising. This now put the Twitter shareholders, the board of directors, those who would say yay or nay to the deal in a difficult spot. If they fess up to what Elon Musk already knows and they admit, yeah, you're right, it's a large percentage of traffic. 50% of our generated traffic is fake from the start. Then Twitter as a company is done. And shortly after that, both Facebook and Google fall as the employee. At this point, you can just go, well, who implemented this? Because now you've gotten Securities and Exchange Commission involved in a fraud scheme. Now you've got state level investigatory agencies involved, and now you have people who would legitimately be asking, okay, so who wrote this software in the first place? And you get a couple of names and go, well, who else did they work for? And then you find out that they worked for Google. They worked for IBM. They worked with GNOME. They worked with the Free Software Foundation. They worked with Novell. They worked with SUSE. They worked with Microsoft. They worked with Steve Ballmer. You start getting a list of everyone that all of these coders have worked with. And while you're not forming a profile, you're starting to note that some of these tend to be a little ideologically driven. And then you can start to piece together a picture of, well, if this person did this kind of lockout, this kind of censorship control for this entity, did they do it for this entity? And if you've got a trifecta here of someone who worked for Twitter, worked for Google, worked for Facebook, and worked for Microsoft, then you probably have an outline of somebody who probably may have set up censorship, a system of censorship at each of those locations. Now you can start asking further questions like, okay, we have criminal fraud here. We're going to need a closer look at any code that this person has ever written at some point in the past. Now you're looking at a full takedown from an admission of guilt from the Twitter board and shareholders that yes, the company did do something really, really rotten. You're now looking at Google, Facebook, and other censoring agencies now having their code paraded out in front of everyone else. Not just leaked, but as in admitted as court admissible evidence by an investigatory agency. This is definitely not the path that the Twitter board of directors wants to go. And I'm pretty sure that they caught on very quickly as to the scale of damages that they could possibly be subjected to based on the actions of Twitter employees. So what's your strategy? What's the plan? Well, first thing, deny. Second thing, at this point, you've now Twitter's reputation is effectively torched. No one else is going to want to buy the company because everyone else who may have wanted to buy the company now knows that there's not actually anything there. The marketing revenue is flat, the sales projections are flat, the actual audience is flat, the boost, deboost, popularity, non-popularity is all effectively meaningless because it's all been artificially controlled. All right, it sounds pretty bad actually. This now puts the Twitter stockholders and shareholders in a difficult position. If they don't get Elon Musk to buy the company, they're screwed because their ability to draw advertisers is going to go from being able to attract legitimate businesses trying to sell a product who now know that there is no return on investment for selling a product through Twitter advertising. The only ones they're going to be able to pick up are those who are paying for political censorship services. And if it's now known as court admissible evidence that you're selling censorship services, now you've got all sorts of other legally interested people, aka congressional representatives and senators, going, hold up, hang on. Uh-uh. Yeah, you can't do that, or we're not going to allow you to do that. And then in 2 years, you have an incoming presidential administration, which is going to be like, okay, Department of Justice, yeah, your marching orders, start making some arrests here. All right, so that's the layout. That's what the Twitter executives are looking at. Now we have the world around that we've been seeing over the past several months. Effectively, the Twitter shareholders, the board of directors, they need Elon Musk to complete the sale. And more importantly, they need it to complete at the original terms. No new information handed over, original price please. Because now that is the only real exit path they have. They either get Elon Musk to buy it, no questions asked, no further information given, or they lose everything. It really is just that simple. All right, so now we're up to this week's events. When after a long period of waffling back and forth and lawsuits flying back and forth, Elon Musk finally agrees to buy Twitter for the original purchase price. He's not going to make any more questions. The sale is going to go through. Woohoo, yippee ki But again, the damage is already done. The developers who implemented the censorship already torched the evidence and got the hell out of Dodge. They left. Thus, the rotten group that was responsible for making these politically oriented targeted boosts and deboosts are no longer with Twitter. Or at least in theory, they're no longer with Twitter because they're going to run to anyone else who would have their particular unique brand of services. All right, so at this point, we can also now surmise that the company that Elon Musk is buying is not necessarily the company that everyone thought Twitter was. Twitter is a social media platform. It's not really great for advertising. Well, how do you make money off of Twitter? And the short version is you really don't. Or the shorter version is the hardware and software required to run Twitter at scale is not actually that extensive. Now, I'm not saying you can run Twitter from the Threadripper Pro sitting in your basement or sitting in your closet, but the hardware infrastructure to run Twitter is not that extensive. At least it is not extensive to the kind of computing power required to back-end Starlink and SpaceX and the Tesla design factories. There's a significant amount of computing horsepower that Elon Musk already has. So what exactly does he get with Twitter? Well, again, we're going back to where did Elon Musk come from? What is he definitively ideologically aligned against? And we can definitively say that he is ideologically aligned against the bigotry and censorship and racism, and purchasing Twitter now and coupling Twitter with Starlink now gives, as I check and see if there's any vowels in here, nope, now gives Elon Musk a way to help his original, his country of birth, Africa, with a censorship-free messaging platform and media platform for conversation. Mm. Yeah, I can't imagine China's going to be particularly happy about that one either. But that is the ultimate goal. It's not necessarily about buying a profitable platform. It's about buying a weapon to use against countries that implement the kind of social practices that Elon Musk personally witnessed the horrors of. And that's why I think it wasn't really the financing to buy Twitter at the original share price was already there, was always there. I don't think Elon Musk really had to actually pull any strings, work any deals to make the purchase at the original price. I'd even go so far as to say is I'm pretty sure that Elon Musk was prepared for a bidding war in which a nationalized state interest, either the Chinese or the Democrat National Party, would bundle forces through a third party in order to retain control of a censorship platform. All right. So that kind of that brings us up to where we are now. Twitter has effectively, or rather, Elon Musk has caved. He has surrendered. He will buy Twitter at the original purchase price. But I think Elon Musk got what he always was going for, a content generation platform that he can couple with Starlink and have a censorship resistant social media platform to fight back against the overt censorship of the socialist ideology. All right, so that's what I had to say on Elon Musk. And okay, so the other topic that I wanted to address as I go and grab my notes. All right. All right. Rings of power. Oh boy. Where do I start? I'm going to start with King K over at Sony. And if you're going, wait, what's that got to do with Amazon Rings of Power? Well, Ken K, as Sony CEO, or rather, Ken Ken Kutar Ken Kutaragi and Kaz. All right, we're looking at two specific individuals. We're looking at Ken K of Sony, and we're looking at Kaz Hirari of Sony. Now, between King K and as I'm double check the timeline. All right. Ken K was responsible for some of the dumber decisions that Sony made during the era of the PlayStation 2 and the PlayStation 3. Uh, he was responsible for some of the pricing of services and products. He was responsible for some of the hardware decisions. He was responsible for letting what we now know as, I think, Daybreak Studios, Sony Online Entertainment, basically waste significant amounts of cash. He was effectively not really a very good CEO person for Sony. Now, Ken K was succeeded by Kaz Hirare. Now, Kaz Hirare went on to become Sony's CEO, and Kaz was known for, well, his greatest accomplishment may not have been the PlayStation 4. His greatest accomplishment may have been telling Sony Pictures to cram the ego, work with Marvel to get Spider Man into the MCU. Yes, Spider Man entering the MCU was entirely the result of Kaz. Now, that's an important distinction to keep in mind as we look at how Kaz ran Sony, because for a while, Kaz was arguably the best CEO that Sony ever had. But for such a great CEO who saw the company rise to such great financial success, why was he ousted? Why was Kaz pushed out of the CEO spot of Sony and replaced? And let's see. And okay, I realize the official story says that in 2019 he was retiring, but I'm going to flat state here now that that was not a retirement. Kaz was forced out. Now, why was he forced out? Well, to understand that, we have to understand contracts. And again, this is also why understanding what's going on with Elon Musk and Twitter is very important, because Twitter needed that contractual agreement that where I'm going to buy it, I'm going to buy this for this price, this is what I'm going to pay, is very important for Twitter to hold Elon Musk to, even after it's been clearly shown that Twitter is not anywhere near that valuable. And in fact, Elon Musk is vastly overpaying for something that may never be able to generate a profit on that scale. Right? So, keeping in mind the contractual matters, we can turn that kind of contractual detail attention to the movie industry. And I'm going to ask a simple question. How do the crew of a movie, not the actors, how does a crew of any given movie get paid? Now, if you're familiar with the Screen Actors Guild of America, you're familiar with the concept of working for scale, that there is a set amount of money, effectively an hourly wage, that is paid to members of the Screen Actors Guild. And if you are a gaffer, a gripper, a whatever, insert industry jargon here, or you have this particular job, if you're working for scale, you get X amount of money per hour. All right. Well, working for scale isn't actually that profitable. It's a lot like working for minimum wage. You either need to work a lot of jobs for a lot of hours for working for scale to support, well, just to support living in general, not any particular lifestyle, just to support being able to pay for rent, power, shelter, water. And because of that, most Staff contracts. You agree to work for a production. You might agree to, when we've heard it before, someone who says they opt for an amount of royalties. They'll take 0.25% of all royalties, or they'll take shares or something. And if the movie does really good financially, then the staff can make a certain amount of money. They can actually make a lot of money. But what happens if you are a higher level? You are a supervisor. You are the key cinematographer, or you have another executive level position within the making of this particular film or this particular production. Can you also, write a specific contract? Well, yes, you can. You can write a contract to do this for this amount of money. And these contracts can get very, very intriguing because they don't always specifically limit, or rather, the best way I think I can phrase this is if a movie does well financially, you can get a financial reward if your bonus is tied to the movie's profits. But what if you don't tie the bonus to the movie profits? What if instead, if you are part of the production staff, you tie your bonus to an award? If you get nominated for this technical award or this technical award or this award, then you get a pay bonus. Hmm. Well, that sounds like an interesting way to give incentive for technical staff to do a job really well. If a makeup artist gets if their work is nominated for best makeup effects, then they get X amount of bonus over their scale averages. Well, now you have somebody who can now, in one fell shot, with not even a winning of the award, just being nominated for the award, make up a lot of money instead of having to work multiple jobs or work on multiple productions. Just work on one production, get an award, get a bonus. And it really is that simple. All right, next question. Who hands out these awards, anyways? Who determines that this product is worth this reward? Or who determines that this production deserves this award? And if you think about something like the Oscars, the Academy Awards, well, it's the Academy, the Screen Actors Guild, that determines who gets an award. That's interesting. Now, who's all eligible to vote in the Screen Actor Guild Awards? Well, we know that some of these people who are voting members and can determine who gets an award or who does not get an award. Among them, when the follow up to the Rocky movies, Creed. When the first Creed movie came out and Sylvester Stallone reprises the Rocky character, no matter how good the movie was, or would have been, one of the actual voters on the Academy Award said they couldn't even watch the movie, they couldn't even consider the movie because they didn't like Sylvester Stallone. They were not going, and the exact quote is just so damning. You think I could remember it without having to go look it up, but it was effectively they weren't going to hand out an award to Sylvester Stallone because he's still playing Rocky. Doesn't matter how good the movie is, they weren't even going to consider it because of one person and one character. Now, when you realize that the entire Academy, which votes on this awards, is pretty much all surmised of activists who have an agenda, we now can understand the Brokeback Mountain effect. Brokeback Mountain was not a good movie. And I don't mean not a good movie, oh, it sucked. I mean not a good movie as in scene transitions. How do you tell when one scene is going to another? Dialogue. How can you tell when one person is talking to another person? What visual cues are telling you that this person is important at this point in time? And and we can just dive down on the details of pacing, blocking. And blocking is when you have something in front of the camera or where a character is in relation to another character. Brokeback Mountain is an atrociously produced movie with, I don't want to say it's some of the worst cinematography ever committed to camera, but it's bad. It's Ed Wood bad. But yet Brokeback Mountain was a critical success. Why? Why is a movie that on all technical fronts is an abject failure receiving such critical acclaim? And the answer is politics. Brokeback Mountain was about two homosexual cowboys and the love story, or the lack of love story. It was a message movie. It was a glorification of life on the range and how all of these men hanging out together couldn't help but embrace each other for the natural qualities within. And if you think that I'm saying this with a straight face, no, I'm not. And yes, I am having to read that part from a script. Alright, so Brokeback Mountain was terrible, but it was critically recognized and critically lauded because it pushed a very specific political and social message. And that's really when, I guess you could say, the common person, the one who doesn't really pay attention to movie awards, kind of sat up and went, huh? Why? I mean, and then later on, in recent years, we've seen award nominations for the Academy Awards and other awards, Golden Globes, where in theatrical presentations, only one movie, this is what, 2016, 2017, out of all of the movies on the nomination list, only one had been under wide release at the time of the ceremony. So just think about that for a second. That the Academy and other awards organizations started nominating pictures that literally no one had seen. I mean, we're coming out of in yesteryear, the Academy Awards were a big deal because you had to have been a movie that people had actually gone and watched. You had to be a commercial success in order to become an award success. You couldn't just make a small production, throw it into one or two theaters, and then walk away with a nomination. You actually had to get your movie out and be seen. Excuse me. Now the awards organizers say, well, the reason, these are really good movies and we're bringing attention to all of these movies that were ignored. No, that's not how the award ceremony works. You have specific categories if you are handing an award to a limited release film. You don't lump a limited release film in and judge it alongside something that is commercially successful, because now you're not giving out awards based on whether or not it was good. You're giving out awards purely based on whether or not it met a specific political objective. Okay, following me so far? All right, so now that we got a framework for understanding when political messaging started to become vastly more important than is this a good movie, we can also understand Lord of the Rings getting denied multiple times at the box office. The Lord of the Rings movies set the benchmark for fantasy acting and for setting the benchmark for storytelling, but were repeatedly ignored because they did not push a political message. Whoop-de-doo, who would have guessed that not having a political message equals market success? That's an interesting theory. Yeah, I wonder who else that worked for. Oh, yes, MCU, all the way up until the last Avengers movie, in which it suddenly had a very political scene, the forced female scene, that sent most viewers screeching to a halt, just took them completely out of the movie. Like, why is that even in there? And then we find out that that was a studio mandated version over the original version, which sounded friggin' awesome. So, going political in movies doesn't really work. So why are movies going political? And this is where we come back to contractual obligations and who gives out the awards, who decides who wins the award, who decides who's nominated for award. And then we have to understand that the staff, the actual production staff, not the ones who are in front of the camera, but the ones who are behind the camera, they need political messaging in movies in order to get their bonuses. They do not get their money if they do not produce a politically oriented message. And that is because the award organizers aren't interested in giving out movies based on objective details. They're only giving out movies, or they're only giving out awards to movies that have a particular message, tell a particular, push a particular viewpoint, deny another viewpoint, and so on and so forth. It's an anti award, it's not really an award. And then we can look over at Sony and begin to understand why Kaz Hirare was forced to retire after effectively turning the Sony production studios around, landing one of the best Spider-Man movies of all time, getting Spider-Man into the MCU, and basically making a whole bunch of comic book fans really, really, really happy. Thing is, Kaz basically put a stop to the over political nature of the Sony films. And we don't even have to go very far to uh, Ghostbusters 2016, for example. A film that was almost entirely ruined because of its overtly political message that no one liked. And real quickly on that subject, where I saw some defenders who, go back and say that, well, Ghostbusters 2 and wasn't all that great either, and Ghostbusters Afterlife wasn't all that great. So, maybe it was just the original actors. They just had this magic for this one moment of time where they just did everything perfectly. And I just kind of tilt my head and just say, Ghostbusters, the animated series. And just kind of, some people stop and go, what? What? Ghostbusters, the animated series, or the animated series of the real Ghostbusters, took on the story of the Ghostbusters, the original Ghostbusters film, and they made those same characters, the same concept work. Now, how they made it work is, first of all, they toned down some of the humor. They took it from PG-13 and took it down a notch, made it lot more kid friendly, but they kept the attitude, the tone, the working of the characters, and they kind of changed the premise from. And the thing is with movies that movies are generally one shot. You have a problem, you have you have the development of the solution to the problem, then you have the climax, and then the problem solved. Movie's over. But by making it an Ghost of the Week presentation where the ghosts aren't going away, they're going to stay here, the supernatural thing can't be solved by crossing the streams and taking out one demigod, it's a permanent thing here. They opened up the Ghostbusters world to keep working despite uh, despite the limitations. That was kind of, well, what I think is a key point to why the animated series works so well is that it ditches the world ending stakes of the movie, but it still makes the concept work. So the idea of a longer term Ghostbusters or more Ghostbusters properties working as feature films, yes, it can be done. you don't have to reinvent or add a political message. You may have to change kind of how the world works. And okay, Gozer's gone, but there's other threats out there. The supernatural isn't going away. The ghosts are here to stay. Or there's always going to be some ghosts that are going to cause a problem. So, you know, we're not going to have these big fights that often, but yeah, we're still going to be prepared for them. Or something to that effect. That's why I think the Ghostbusters movies, the follow up movies, don't really work, is that they are set on the formula of the first movie of there's a big problem, it's a world ending problem, the stakes are really high, we're going to have to do something drastic and stupid to fix this problem. But a Ghostbusters movie that maybe had normalized things instead of having a world ending threat, where we had just followed the characters as they go about solving multiple different problems. And instead of having a world ending threat, what if they have a world creation threat? And it's like, um, this ghost, they're coming together. We've noticed a pattern over this, and you can have a slow burn till the end of the film. Anyways, I know I got off on a tangent here of how would I pitch uh, a Ghostbusters movie that could actually work in a theatrical setting. So we'll move away from that and try to focus back on the Sony pictures. But we now have a big problem in the wake of Ghostbusters 2016 and Kaz Harare taking over as Sony CEO, saying, knock off this overtly political garbage. Stop trying to shove messages into Sony Pictures. Stop trying to be political with everything that you do. Stop trying to push your ideology every single movie that you make. And for a while there, Sony either was making the best movies they had ever made, cough Spider Man, or they were making one of the best Bond movies, apparently, well, one of the best since the Pierce Brosnan era in the Skyfall. A little dumb, but that was Sony Pictures, right? Skyfall, Sony Pictures. And I may be confusing it with, no, not Skyfall. No Time to Die? Yes, No Time to Die. Sorry. Wow. No Time to Die, when it finally came out, was not the movie that everyone was expecting it to be. And part of that can be directly attributed to the input that Kaz Harari had had before he was unceremoniously ejected. Now, again, why was he ejected? Because a vast number of personnel, employees on the Sony payroll, they weren't necessarily making their money from working for scale. They were making their money off of the bonuses they got from winning awards. Well, if the awards that are cited in your contract that you get a bonus for being nominated for, you get a bonus for winning, if you are not even eligible for those awards because you are not pushing a political statement, what's that do to your finances? What's that do to your mortgage payment? What's that do to your rent? What's that do to your house payment? What's that do to your car payment? What's that do for that fancy television you bought? What's that? How are you gonna afford that expensive dog you got? How you gonna pay for this? How you gonna pay for that if the production you're working on can't even qualify for the nomination and awards that are in your contract because you can't put the political message in your production? Oh, that's right. You go broke. You either have to dip into your savings if you have them, or you lose money. You go deeper into debt. So now you have a financial motivation for those inside of Sony who cannot tolerate a CEO who's demanding that you drop the political okay, that you drop the political propaganda from your films and you just focus on making a good film that makes money at the box office because that's not how your contract is written. You don't, if your contract is written that you get money based on nomination for awards or the winning of awards, not on whether or not the movie is successful, it doesn't matter if the movie is successful or not. If you didn't get that nomination or that award, you are out that bonus. You don't get that money. Now, one would think, well, why not just renegotiate the contract? Well, a lot of those movie contracts can't be renegotiated. Some of them are written long in advance. If you are, and this is something we hear about a lot in uh, movie history when X, I think my cat has just re entered the building. Um, where we hear about X actor here, Bob Hope, Bing Crosby, Cary Grant, are contracted to produce X number of pictures for X studio, and they can only make another picture with another studio if they are released from their contract or to go make that picture, or if that picture now becomes part of the number of movies that they're supposed to make for the contract. And we also hear this is why some actors appear in really bad movies, really terribly produced movies, because they were contractually obligated to appear. Or if they went ahead and did that movie, they would uh, get this thing. And sometimes that really can work out for an actor. Vin Diesel, for example, agreed to appear in Fast and the Furious again if he was given the rights to Riddick. Now, because of that, we got the Chronicles of Riddick and the Riddick video game. What is it, Assault on Dark Athena? Or Escape from Butcher Bay? It may actually be subtitled both. I don't want to open Steam and go look at it, see which one it was. But because sometimes working the contractual obligations can be beneficial. Other times it's not so beneficial. If you are staff on a production, and again, this is how your contract is written. You must produce 18 movies with this picture company. And your bonuses for all of those 18 different pictures are tied to whether or not the picture wins an award with this outlet here or is nominated with this outlet here. Excuse me. If that's how your contract is structured, then you're probably not going to be able to renegotiate that contract to say, well, I want a portion of the picture's money instead. And yes, my cat has decided to come up and attempt to headbutt me again. Anyways, at least I got the microphone off in time. Anyways, so that lays out, I hope, why the contracts matter and why there is a backlash from the production staff over films that are being pushed with a political message. And now we can turn, now that we have an understanding of what's going on here, how the production staff actually makes money, why they need the political propaganda to continue, we can now look at rings of power. Now, for most people, the quick shot is, well, Rings of Power is on a subscription service. If you have an Amazon Prime subscription, you are subsidizing Rings of Power. They get paid no matter what. Not necessarily. When it comes to streaming services in general, payouts are generally can be lined up in one of two different manners. The first manner is you get paid scale. If it's a Screen Actors Guild production and it's being done through Screen Actor Guild regulations, you do have to guarantee meeting at least the scale payouts, which again, for most of the staff who are producing the picture, is not enough money to live on. So, from that point, these staff can pick up additional funding either by the aforementioned award contracts. If they did a great job and are nominated for an award, they get X amount of percentage bonus or they get X dollar amount bonus. Hey, really great. They make a political message, shove it in a movie. The outlet that they've named in their contracts at least nominates them, and hey, there's their rent payment for the next 3 months. Boom, job done. But with streaming services, it may not be that simple because the streaming service may also base the financial rewards, on other factors, such as how many people actually watch this all the way through. And for a streaming platform, that's really easy to tell how many people watch it. So if you are a staff, you may even find yourself on a punitive implementation of Screen Actor rule or Screen Actor Guild rules, where if the vast majority of your audience is clicking off, turning off the picture before they're even halfway through it, you may not even get your scale payment because it's a punitive action. And for Amazon, the problem is oh so much exponentially worse. We do not, at this point in time, know the exact contractual details of the production staff that were actually working on Rings of Power. We don't know under what condition they get paid. We don't know under what conditions they get a bonus. We don't know what conditions they have to meet in terms of award nominations for physical gain. We really don't know a lot. What we do know is that Rings of Power has already cost Amazon a number of Amazon Prime subscriptions, as in people who watched Rings of Power, watched less than half an episode, and then canceled their Prime subscription. This badge is under. Why am I up here? Now, if you're thinking, well, that can't be right. No, 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 it is. And the worst part here is, okay, for a large portion of, well, any countries where Amazon uh, has an Amazon uh, retail presence or retail service, Amazon's really hard to compete against. If you are in rural America and you need to go shopping for products and your nearest Walmart is 25 miles away and the selection is crap, it's really kind of hard to beat Amazon's shop online, get it delivered Prime. There's the product that you need in a timely manner, and you didn't have to drive 50 miles to go get your materials. All right, so once we understand that one of the reasons why Amazon Prime Video can get away with what it does is that a large percentage of Amazon's targeted retail market really can't do without Amazon. Without Amazon, everything else is more expensive, more time consuming, and other online options just aren't as good. Walmart's online presence is nowhere near good enough to counter Amazon's. Uh, Costco's online presence, nowhere near good enough to counter Amazon's. Uh, Another one, AliExpress and Banggood, and the hoist of other Chinese oriented businesses that also sell into the American market, their selection of products is simply not good enough or timely enough to compete with Amazon. Okay, yeah, Amazon's done a lot of work on warehousing and getting products set up for quick delivery to a number of different locations, regardless of geographic territory to cover. In other words, you've got a warehouse almost in every state, so getting products where they need to go or where they need to be, not really that hard for Amazon anymore. So once we understand that Amazon wasn't really worried about political messaging in oh, in the Amazon Prime videos, because the Prime subscription service for retail products is too valuable to an overwhelming large percentage of a non ultra urban inner city population, where personal shoppers, where you can pay somebody less than an Amazon prescription per year to be your uh, personal shopper, who you give them a list of everything you need and you need it X amount of days, and then they go and get the items that you want. Or they take it a step further, and for a little bit more money, they'll go get you clothes. They'll also drop off your dry cleaning. They'll do other services that are an add-on package to simply just, here's the list of items I need. I'm going to dial up Uber. I'm going to use Uber Eats. Here's what I want. Please deliver it to me. Personal shoppers are turning into big business in urban and even suburban areas where consumers are just fed up with Amazon's antics. And as that trend, so Amazon's not really worried about the rural or sub-rural America, or rural or sub-rural other nations where there are significant distances and time is short. But in urban and suburban areas where personal shoppers are almost readily available in figuring out how to advertise personal shopper services in such a manner that they can gain steady clientele, that's a real big threat to Amazon's market dominance. And it doesn't take a lot to figure out that if zip code here is an urban or suburban or inner city area, this person in this zip code here watched Rings of Power, stopped Rings of Power at X time mark here, canceled Prime subscription at time mark here. That's it doesn't really take a lot to go. That's a problem. But it ultimately is what Amazon is facing. They're facing people who watched Rings of Power and canceled the service because Rings of Power were finally just the straw that broke the camel's back. Second problem is all of these people who hated Rings of Power are talking. Not just Tolkien fans, not just people like Shad over at Shadiversity, not just people like Living Anachronism, not just Tolkien fans, is casual people, sons, fathers, mothers, daughters, family members, are all just people who love the Peter Jackson movies, who even tolerated the Hobbit movies and completely understood that Peter Jackson was brought in at the last minute to salvage at least something from the ruined production. So those kind of people who are talking and are going like, this is just bad, this is terrible. And the wave of Ring of Power sucks is too large to bury. Most casual viewers, and I mean casual viewers, someone who is not being paid to watch Rings of Power, all admit it's terrible, it's bad, it's an insult. I say what you will about the animated Lord of the Rings movies, at least they tried to be true to the spirit of the film or spirit of the books, and say a lot of what you will about the things that Peter Jackson changed for both the Hobbit movies and Lord of the Rings. He at least tried to stay true to the spirit of what Tolkien had written about and what Tolkien had actually published. He tried to stay true to the roots of what Tolkien wanted. And we got very powerful movies with very powerful presentations of characters. And yes, some things had to be changed because not everything in a book translates well to a film. But we got a good adaptation that made us feel like we had actually witnessed something that Tolkien probably would have approved of if he were alive. Rings of Power, not so much. All right. So bringing us back to Rings of Power is a rolling disaster. People are watching it and canceling Amazon Prime subscriptions. People are watching it and cutting it off without even finishing a full episode. More people are watching live reactions to Rings of Power than are actually watching Rings of Power itself. You're going, how can you know that? And going, I'm not going to reveal how I know that, but I do know that at least one YouTuber who did a live reaction to Rings of Power had more views watching that live reaction than that episode actually got. Yeah, that's how low it is internally. It would not be I do not believe it would be inaccurate to say that more people are watching the reactions to Rings of Power than are actually watching Rings of Power itself. Period. And that people who are making a living by reacting to media content are making more money than the production staff of Rings of Power because they actually have people watching them. It's a scary thought, isn't it? And that's why Amazon is kind of freaking out and the production staff are kind of freaking out. Because now it gets even worse for Amazon. Or rather worse for the production staff because they're not meeting the targets. They are not meeting the number of viewers that a effectively free subscription service for Prime customers is supposed to grant. It would not be inaccurate to say that the vast majority of Prime subscribers have not even loaded the Prime Video app. And again, for those who were vested in Prime Video, Rings of Power has actually cost Amazon actual subscribers. Subscribers who may or may not be coming back at some point in the future. All right, so that's pretty bad. Well, how can it get worse? Because the damage is not so easily undone. Rings of Power is a flaming debacle that Amazon spent significant amounts of money on. But you can't tell that Amazon spent significant amounts of money on Rings of Power. The costumes look cheap. I mean, as in special advertisement on Kotaku for get your Halloween costume here, cheap. As in, we saw the numbers on the budget. How do you not actually have real armor? We know what Peter Jackson pulled off with his budget for his Tolkien films and how good that looked. And Rings of Power didn't even meet that level. Despite, at this point, having access to technologies that Peter Jackson really didn't have to work with when Lord of the Rings started filming. 3D metallic printing is now a thing. You can make intricate 3D printed metallic designs. You can even sew, technically using metal threads, to make realistic looking armor. We've seen some of the work that, again, Shad over at Shadiversity has done with that mock chainmail armor hoodie that he has, the chainmail print. You have different techniques of production of costumes and equipment. So why does Rings of Power look bad? I mean, objectively bad. Give me a second while I look at my defeat badges here. Bullet Slayer. Okay, I've already got Freak Show. Continuing with the badges. Anyways, so Rings of Power looks cheap. And then we come back to where I started with talking about Brokeback Mountain from an objective viewpoint. I mean, objective, as in things that you can compare one to the other. You can compare tracking shots, you can compare blocking, where actors stand in relation to one another. You can compare dialogue. How does one sentence flow to another? How does one character react to another? You can compare emotion. Is this character making an expression that communicates the emotion that they are feeling? Do they look happy? Do they look sad? There's a guy on YouTube goes by the name Electroboom. Now, I don't follow his channel. I watch a few of his videos, but Electroboom has a very manipulative face. That is to say that he just does this thing with his eyes that looks really weird, and he's very, very expressive. And again, referencing Shad at Shadiversity, him and his colleagues, occasionally, they do this angry eyes thing where they look just pissed off, and someone colors in their eyes with like a Saiyan rage coloring or something, but they give a facial expression to go along with it. And for being amateur YouTube production people, and I think this actually more applies to Night's Watch, where you have complete amateurs who are just they're not they're not professional actors. They haven't been to film school. They haven't been to acting school. They don't have any major motion picture credits under their belt. They don't have any television shows under their belt. But they can communicate with facial expressions what they're feeling: happy, sad, joyful, silly, sarcasm, sliding the eyes. They have all these different expressions. So, how is it that YouTube channels with non professional actors can have a wider range, a dramatically wider range of facial expressions and emotions than professionally paid actors who went to acting schools and are considered the leads of their production? And someone out there, I forget who, it was a really interesting image where they composited the person who playing Gladriel, I think, where they composited all of the images of her face and then did a difference recognition. Now, first time that I saw this tech being done was by David Morgan Marr from Irregular Web Comics for a Garfield comic, Garfield Without Garfield, I think, where they composited all of the images over of Garfield over several years, and it was kind of striking to see that so many characters were in the same position that when the image values were calculated uh, and then rated against each other. So this color appears this often, so this you get this gradient value here. You could still almost make out the main characters of the Garfield comic because they had been in the same position so many times. So somebody did the same kind of gradient difference, gradient over time difference modulation. Hope I got that correct on the actor for Gladriel across all the episodes of Rings of Power so far. Now, you would think that with a professional voice actor who's being placed in multiple different situations, you would have a wide range. There would never be any number of pixels that would calculate to be the exact same image across the range of all instances where the angular capture is identical. That is to say, she's looking at the same spot on the camera or near enough where you can do a calculation to map the facial expression that is on camera to a forward face on perspective. The expression doesn't change. There is just no variance. It's just there's no eye movement, there's no lip movement, there's no cheek movement, there's no jawbone movement. Essentially, the actress who plays Gladriel has the same expression. It's it's even worse. And I know that somebody did this with Keanu Reeves in the wake of what was it, Constantine, where everyone kind of dragged on the dry acting. The emotionless delivery. And I know that somebody done this with the guy who played Chakotay on Star Trek Voyager, Robert Beltran, who very good in acting. And if you do enough mapping of, well, this would be their face head on from this angle, and you can do that with 3D modeling, and then these are the expressions that we captured, and you at least have some variance. You have a raised eyebrow. I mean, guy who played Tuvok, uh, his facial gradient mapping modulation over time. I really hope I'm using the correct terminology here, because if I don't, somebody's going to be really pissed off at me. Try to give me another lecture on how it works again, which maybe I do need. But anyway, so you get a surprising range of emotions out of Tuvok, who's a Vulcan, who's supposed to be emotional, and partly that because he's always spocking his eyebrow, or tilting his head, or twisting his mouth, or doing some kind of facial tick, something to indicate that he may be Vulcan, but he's not a static, immovable object. And the same thing with Janeway, and the same thing with Seven of Nine, and the same thing with almost any other character. If you do a gradient modulation mapping over time, you get some difference. You don't have a static face. But with bad actors, wooden actors, actors who aren't capable of showing emotion, you don't get a change in the state of the face. You get these same. I've already been on this bridge. Apparently, yes, I have. Excuse me. So, the actress of Galadriel, very wooden stand, very wooden delivery, facial expression is almost never changing. Now, that's something that can be objectively determined. You're not displaying emotion. Another thing that can be objectively determined is dialogue. Are you responding to a question that somebody asked? Are you responding in time? Are you fitting a pattern of talking? It's like if you are a southern person and you talk like you're. I'm going to need some water before I do this one. If you talk like you're from the deep south and you got a bit of an accent, so you're always just drawling your words and you're just drawing things out as how you talk. If you're talking with somebody from the north who's just got like this really clipped accent, there's a nasal tone, and is always talking in a high pitched voice, and they sound like Inspector Gadget or Don Adams, then there should be some kind of pause between the two, and you get some kind of, well, could you just hurry up? You're taking too long. But no, I don't really want to. I don't want to think about this. Well, you're taking too long. Give me a decision. Give me a decision. Give me a decision. Oh, would you just shut up before I take a rolling pin to your head? See, that's kind of the point. You get some kind of cadence. You get some kind of pattern. You get some kind of movement. You get something, a difference between when you are conducting a dialogue. And this was something that Shadiversity just in the Rings of Power trailers, he just couldn't let go of the absolutely dreadful, what wasn't even dialogue, something that was just being passed off as dialogue. Wasn't actually two characters talking. I'm not even sure what I would refer to. It was bad. All right. So once we start again looking at the objective portions, we now have a large problem for Amazon. Yes, Rings of Power has nailed its political message. It has been the most obnoxiously racist, obnoxiously bigoted, obnoxiously misanthropic. Trying to think of sociopathic. It's been a complete train wreck that treats its audience with absolute disdain, that completely ignores. Someone commented, it was like watching a film about a Tolkien property written by somebody who asked for the cliff notes on the Wikipedia from the Wikipedia page. I thought that was a very apt description of how Rings of Power actually goes. So, Rings of Power is hated objectively from every objective measure of something that can be metric and put into a metric and determined. Rings of Power is bad. Now, it lands its political message, so this presents a significant problem. Some of the production staff could still make their mortgage payment if Rings of Power racks up in the award circuit. That is to say, the usual cadre of award organizations that hand out awards to those movies that best contribute to the continuation of a political ideology. Rings of Power could rack up awards for that. The problem is the award organizations, and again, we'll poke on the Oscars, the Screen Actors Guild for a moment, they do kind of rely on the movies at least not being objectively bad. And we get cases like Brokeback Mountain where an objectively bad movie makes it all the way through because somebody is set on they are going to make this political statement and they are going to make this political statement now. But Rings of Power is not an outlier. It's not different. It's awarding Rings of Power with best cinematography, best picture, best makeup, best whatever insert here award from somebody organization here. Regardless of all of that, if those awards start getting handed out, questions will start to be asked of the Amazon Prime subscribers. Effectively speaking, the subscribers know Rings of Power is not an award worthy show. It's not that good. The costume design is atrociously bad. The dialogue, this is not an award winning script. So the award organizations, they've survived so long being able to run this grift, for lack of a better immediate term, because they do carefully at least look at it. Again, we've seen this with recent Academy Award pictures where they're pretty much picking films that haven't been sent to wide release. Well, if the movie has not been in wide release and a wide number of people have not seen the picture and a wide number of people aren't aware of the picture, then as long as it meets the political goals, if it's actually just decent in the technical areas, the objective areas of film production, then the awards organization can skate by, and that there's probably not going to be a vast number of people who will be able to go, hold up. I speak Swahili, and they're not actually speaking Swahili. Or, you know what, I'm relatively fluent in Latin, and that doctor was full of it. And so on and so forth. Pick an obscure film that's had almost no views, claim it's great, and as long as it's not terrible, if it's obscure enough or different enough, well, you can get away with maybe thinking that it's okay. But Rings of Power doesn't have that luxury. It's a property that everyone knows. It's a property that already had an award capable, or what should have been an award winning series from Peter Jackson, but was denied because it didn't convey the desired political messages. Lord of the Rings was Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings was accurate in spirit to Lord of the Rings, not accurate in spirit to Democrat politics. And that's a distinct factor to keep in mind. Rings of Power is disrespectful, if not desecrating, the spirit of what Tolkien would have, of what we know Tolkien wrote about in regards to the development and construction of Lord of the Rings. Rings of Power just completely throws everything Tolkien ever wrote into a trash bin to construct its own narrative, its own political message, and is all the worse for that. But we have something to compare it with. We have the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings movies. We have the Hobbit movies. We have the Bashki movie. We have the other animated movie. We have depictions of Lord of the Rings. We have the Lord of the Rings video games, War in the North, Shadow of Mordor. We have depictions of Tolkien's world that are accurate to that world. So we have something to compare Rings of Power against and go, this is not accurate to the depiction of Tolkien's world. This is counter to the depiction of Tolkien's world. So this is not an award capable series. The first organization that hands it an award that is not a politically oriented reward is going to completely torch any credibility they have left when it comes to handing out awards. And questions will be asked not by people like me who are already asking the questions, but by the common consumer and be like, hang on, I saw a few minutes of Rings of Power. There is no way those cheap, clunky, cardboard looking costumes are in any way deserving of best costume design. Worst costume design, a Razzie, yes. Best costume design, oh heels no. So we can kind of back this up again. Why is this such a big problem to Amazon? Because theoretically, the cost of making and running Rings of Power is buried in Prime subscriptions. Not necessarily. The production staff, their payment is not necessarily tied separate of the film's performance. Rather, or separate of the production performance. Rather, there are certain metrics that are expected to be met. There are reasons why some production companies shutter some shows and keep others going. Most of the time, it's really based on finances. You allocate a certain amount of money based on who's actually watching. If you have a large number of subscribers watching this genre of films or this particular film, then that genre of films or this particular film gets a larger section of money from those subscribers. That's generally how most subscription services work. What you watch, what you actually are paying, what you I'm gonna put this. What you pay, what you watch determines where the money that you pay goes to. It's the same thing true with YouTube. If I'm a YouTube premium subscriber, now whatever I watch on YouTube that I'm logged into, a portion of my YouTube premium subscription then goes to that channel that I was watching. So like I absolutely like Linkara's Atop the Fourth Wall. Linkara is, I mean, if you haven't heard him sing, you need to listen to him sing at least once. I really would like to I really wanted to get Linkar and Robert DeVee into the same room for a recording session. Just I think that would have been I think that would be awesome or would have been awesome. I don't think it's possible now, but would have been awesome. But anyways, and I actually contacted Linkar about this because it's like, I'm a YouTube premium subscriber. Do you actually get anything for me watching your YouTube videos? Because I really like the content that you produce. And he was like, well, as long as you're a premium subscriber, yes, I do get a kickback. I do get some money out of you watching my content that way. And that's really how most streaming services work. Now, for Rings of Power, effectively speaking, nobody is watching it except those who are being paid to watch it. And that's a big problem because now this wrecks Amazon's plans. Another season of Rings of Power can't be greenlighted based on internal performances. If it is greenlighted, if Rings of Power continues for some reason, then there are definitely questions to be asked over why is it being pushed? Why is it being continued? Give me a second while I check my badges. And I hope I'm missing the badge that's down in here. I mean, I shouldn't be. All right. I know I've been under the ship. What am I missing? Did I somehow skip the hospital, even though I came into the hospital? All right, we're going to go back through and roll this again. There's the hospital badge. Oh, I think I know which one I'm missing. Need to go this way. Badge earned. That was it. So internally, the budget that we'll put this in as general terms as I think I can make it. The budget that a show is given is predicated on the amount of merchandising sales that the show actually makes. As in, is there a product that is tied in with this? Um, Replicas of props used during the production, or things like that. If those items aren't selling that are directly tied to the production, well, that's one loss of revenue. Well, another one, production, especially in regards to streaming, is based on how many people are actually watching. More importantly, how many people are actually watching through to completion. You get a higher amount of money if somebody watches your product all the way to the end than if somebody just watches your product halfway through and then turns it off. Well, what happens if the amount of subscribers you actually have watching the film are not anywhere close to the amount of money that you spent on the film or the production? And that's where Rings of Power is at right now. The amount of money that was dropped on Rings of Power by Amazon in production costs, training costs, shooting costs, filming costs, everything it costs to actually make the film would theoretically be offset by the number of people watching it. Well, the number of people watching it isn't enough to make up that difference. So what does Amazon do? Does Amazon just pay? Well, they've already paid for those costs, but because of internal structuring, they're not making that money back. And then we get into this whole complicated question of, well, Amazon has lots of money in the bank, they can take a hit or two. Can they? Can Amazon really afford to take a financial hit on the scale of Rings of Power? Because here's a bit here, the big question here is Amazon has positioned itself as a vital service for the way most people live their lives right now, or go shopping or do price comparisons. Well, what happens if those people start looking for other solutions, or something like Rings of Power is the catalyst to send them looking for other solutions? What if that tiny website local startup that promises to centralize your personal shopper needs now has an extra influx because somebody went, you know what, screw it, I'm not handing Amazon any more money unless I absolutely have to? That does long term financial damage, damage that can't be overcome by simply having money in the bank. And that's the big problem that Amazon is facing right now. It's just not the critical reaction. All right, I got a tech support thing to go deal with. Yeah, I got to make money too. So I'm going to go pay my bills. So I'm going to try and cap it off here. That's the problem that Amazon is facing right now. They have bills to pay, and Rings of Power has cost the company a significant amount of cash. I saw somebody who said it's a $1 billion flop on a scale larger than the Eternals. Now, I find that hard to believe, But after looking at Disney's production values and after talking with some people who were involved in Rings of Power production, I'm not unconvinced that the phrase billion-dollar loss can be directly attributed to Rings of Power. And again, this comes back to is contractual matters. Who gets paid, when they get paid, how they get paid, where they get paid. Rings of Power has not met the metrics that were predetermined contractually for how the staff would get paid. There's going to be a number of people on Rings of Power who are going to go bankrupt because they will not be able to make the loan payments, the loans that they took out, because they're not going to get their kickbacks, they're not going to get their bonuses because their production flopped. They're going to be very angry, they're going to be very bitter, and they're going to do their best to disguise how bad things are about to get for them. And all I can say is you did it to yourself. The Tolkien fans already had a blueprint. They already had something they were happy with, and you spit on that and you desecrated it. And as to Twitter, I look forward to what Elon Musk can possibly do once he actually assumes control of Twitter. But for the most part, the cadre of censorship artists have already jumped ship and are already working for other entities. Some of those are now working for state entities. So the fight against censorship is not going to be over just by Elon Musk buying Twitter. It's not going to be over by Google spinning YouTube off. It's not going to be over, probably, until the heat death of the universe. So keep fighting. I'm Aurian Archive. We'll catch